Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today for another session of Excelo's best practices. We're very, very grateful that you could join us. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Today, we're going to be going over billable and cost rates. My name is Lainey, and I am a Client Success Manager here at Excelo, and I am joined today by Peter. Say hi, Peter.
Hello, Peter.
Peter is one of our excellent implementation managers and your presenter for today, and I can assure you, you are in very good hands. So just a quick rundown of the agenda. First, we're going to talk about what exactly are billable and cost rates. What does that even mean? And then we're going to talk about how you can set up billable and cost rates in Excelo and what that looks like on the back end, and then where those billable and cost rates come into play within the software. And then Peter's going to talk to you about a really nifty feature of Excelo, which are divisions. Sweet. So feel free to ask any questions to us during the webinar. You can use that Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions, and we will either answer them during or after the webinar. And without any further ado, Peter, I will hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lainey. And hello, everybody. Welcome to another best practice webinar. So today we're going to be talking about billable and cost rates. And for this best practice webinar, we're going to be going through these bullet points inside of my test deployment. So I'm going to go ahead and take over the screen share here, and I'm going to take you into my test deployment. You should be seeing my screen now. We're taking a look at the task board, which is just my home page. And we're going to begin with answering the question. What are billable and what are cost rates? What's the difference between the two? Simply put, cost rates are what we charge as an employee to our employer. So it's basically our hourly rate. So it's the cost to the employer for an hour of that employee's time. Now, our billable rates are what we charge our clients for an hour of this person's time. For example, you may be a digital agency and you have a few different employees across different departments. Most people inside your design department, they bill at a rate of $100 an hour, where you might have someone in your project management department who bills at a rate of $150. Those are the kind of billable rates we would define and how they would be used. So to set up these billable rates inside of Excelo, we're going to go ahead and navigate to our configuration. Now, your configuration is going to be found in your left-hand side here. Just expand this menu. And down at the bottom, you'll have the option called configuration. Select that, and you'll be taken to your configuration page. From here, where we want to go next is navigating down below, finding our section called billing and rates, expand that, and then we're going to select rates. Once you select that, we're going to populate a list of all of your billable and cost rates inside of your deployment. Now you can see here, I have a few rates already defined across billable and cost rates. And for me, I have named them exactly the same. Now, this is more so of a process thing for you all and what makes the most sense for you. But just to walk you through some examples of what I've seen across implementing multiple clients, that some people prefer to have their billable rate names, such as UX, project management, design, match the cost rates down below. So you have cost rates allocated for your UX team, cost rates allocated for your design team. Other times, you may use cost rates as a way to define seniority. So you may have a junior engineer cost rate, but he bills at a project management rate. So just an example there. Now, you must have at least one cost rate inside of your deployment in order to add a cost rate to a specific user. So just keep that in mind. If you're new to Excelo and you've just opened up your Excelo deployment, then rest assured we already have a default cost rate in there for you. Now, if you wanted to add in more, you could do so from this page by just dropping down add rate and selecting which one you'd like to add. Is it a cost rate or is it a billable rate? You'll go ahead and select that, define the title, and we'll call this junior engineer. and we'll add in the rate. We'll say this rate is $70. So for every hour logged by a user with a junior engineer cost rate, it is costing the company $70. So let's see where we can put these cost rates into play. Now, in our configuration, we're going to scroll up and we're going to find users and groups. It's just the second one from the top. Expand that and then select users. This is going to take you to your user list page. And this is where we're going to define the specific rate for each employee. Now, I highly recommend having a cost rate assigned to each employee. That way, your profitability margins on your project insights and your profitability dashboard are accurate. If you don't have a cost rate assigned to a specific user, you may not be pulling in the correct profitability. So we're going to scroll down below and we're going to find one of these users here. Let's go ahead and check in with our friend Humongous. We're going to select Edit User. And then from this Edit User page, we're going to scroll down below and we see two sections. One is their default billable rate. And then the second is their default cost rate. So your default billable rate is going to be their staff rate. I did air quotations there, but that's going to be your staff rate. So whenever this user bills for work, whether it be a project, a ticket, or a retainer, their default staff rate will be whatever we define here. So project management rate overridden to the rate of 175. Excuse me. Now we don't have to overwrite it. If we don't overwrite it, we'll have the rate of 150. Below that, you have your default cost rate. This is the cost to the employer for an hour of this user's time. Now we've defined our cost rate here. We'll go ahead and select junior engineer now. And that's $70. Now we can always overwrite that since some users may have different cost rates, but still kind of within the same bracket of work. So they're both still considered junior engineers. It's just one might get paid a little bit more because he's been here longer, but he's not quite a senior engineer yet or a middle engineer. So we can change that here by overriding and we'll say $72.50. Cool. So with that, we've just defined our cost and default billable rate for the user Humongous. Now from here, let's talk about where the billable rates come into play on your actual work object. So right now, we've mainly been working inside the configuration end. So let's actually take a look at the front end and see where we work on a project and how rates might come into play there. So rates can be assigned to projects, tickets, and retainers. So with those objects in mind, we're first going to start with projects. So we're going to find a project here. We're going to find a project for OnePlus, and we'll use the website design project. Now, one thing you can do that's kind of cool is you can set specific rates per specific project or per particular project. So you're doing a website design project for company OnePlus, and you might have different rates than what you've already defined. So if you wanted to set up project specific rates, the way you would do that is first by dropping down the create option here. And when you drop down create, you're going to see an option here in the last two. There's going to be one sandwich in between them called rate card. Once you create that rate card, a new tab will populate here on your overview page, and you see I already have it because I've selected it, and it's going to be called rates. So just to refresh you here, we are currently looking at project number 15 for website design for the company OnePlus. Now, these are the rates unique to this project. We have our default billable rates down here on our left-hand column under original rates. You see the title and the default rate for each one. And then we have our override rate. So this is where we can set override rates to supersede what is set in our default preferences. So for this project in particular, we can say that instead of charging $200 for UX, we want to charge $225. we can save that, and then we have the option to update rates for existing activity rates. What this means is we're just going to update all activities that have this past rate and apply the new rate to them. So we're going to save that. And now whenever we log work on this project at a UX rate, it will no longer be 200, but instead it will be 225. So really handy if you want to set project rates for each different project you work with. If that's something you negotiate with your client, what the hourly rate will be, then this function is going to be perfect for you. Now from here, another thing you can do, tabbing over to our overview page on the same project so we can see our milestones and tasks, is you can set a rate specific to each different task. Now you can do that by selecting Edit Plan here, or when you initially create the project plan. On the Gantt chart, where we have all of our milestones and tasks displayed as line items on the left-hand side, if we wanted to say task 2 should always be billed at a rate of project management, all we have to do is either select the pencil icon for the appropriate line item or click directly into the budget cell. We'll click directly to that budget cell. We're going to drop down rate and we're going to say project management rate. So now whenever somebody logs work against this task, no matter who it is and what their staff rate is, the value generated for an hour's worth of work will always be $200. So setting rates specifically on task are a surefire way to make sure you bill appropriately. Because if you have something set to staff rates like that, then whatever time you log, let's say you log an hour, Lainey could log an hour at $150 an hour because that's her staff rate, where my default billable rate might be 100. So I log an hour and then I've just generated $100 worth of value on the same exact task. So staff rates are useful if you're basing your task or your ticket on time and materials and not a set rate. So for now though, we're going to drop down and select project management and we're going to say $200. So whenever someone logs work on this task, they will do it at a billable rate of $200 an hour. Now you can do that for all of your tasks down below if you want to get that detailed. So we're going to save that and save and exit. From here, we're going to go ahead and transition into our tickets now. Now, tickets by default are time and materials along with staff rates. So when you create a ticket, whoever logs work on that project, or excuse me, the ticket, their staff rate will apply. Now you can update rates on a ticket by editing the budget and the rate, and I'll talk about how we can do that right now. So let's go ahead and find a ticket together. We'll find one, oh, I have it titled issue in my deployment, sorry. We'll find one for 1+. And we'll say, let's do fix SSD. So this is a old historical ticket that has been raised in my test deployment to fix the SSD. Now, coming down on our left-hand side, we have a section called budget and work. So if we had a particular ticket type called standard ticket, and for this standard ticket, we always bill at $150 an hour, we might want to consider adding that in as a progression action. And I'll circle back to that in a second. Alternatively, if you had another ticket type called 24/7 support, it makes sense to charge them an override, or not an override, an overtime rate. So maybe instead of 150, you're charging them 200 because this ticket came in after hours. Now, if you wanted to edit it on the fly for the particular ticket, the area you're looking for is edit budget. When you select that, you'll be able to select a defined rate. You'll notice here it's already defaulting to staff rate. But if we wanted to select a defined rate, we'll say project management at 100. That means no matter who logs time on this ticket, they will always bill it at $100 an hour. We'll save that. And I want to circle back to what I was talking about in terms of the progressions. Now, this is getting just a little bit more detailed, but I want to touch on it lightly to at least let you know the capabilities and how you can really utilize progressions and actions to your full benefit. So I've entered back into my configuration, and the area I want to look at next is called issues. Some of you may have it titled to tickets. It's the same thing. We're going to go ahead and select types, progressions, and fields. As we all know, that you can have multiple different ticket types under your ticket types. That's redundant. Under your ticket types if you were on ServOps and premium. So you see here, I have a few ticket types. I have billable ticket, non-billable, 24/7 support. Now, looking at my billable ticket type, I want to make it as easy as possible for my staff to select the right rate. So what I've done is I've added in a couple progression actions down below. You see them titled here, project management rate and retainer rate. So when I create a new ticket and I move into the status of open, there is an action associated with each one of these progressions. We see the action for project management rate, when we select that, is to update the rate of the ticket to 150. And because we've made that hidden, that means it's going to update in the background. So we don't have to rely on our staff to update create the right rate appropriately. Instead, it's going to update in the background, therefore mitigating the margin for error. And then down below, we have our retainer rate progression. So when you select that, the rate of retainer rate, $100 an hour, is updated in the background. We see it's marked as hidden here. So that will update once you select that status. To show you an example of that, we can drop down create here, select issue, and then once we select our billable ticket type, under status, here we go. There we go. Under status, you'll have your project management rate or retainer rate. So whichever one I select here is the rate that's going to be defined. Now, if you don't even have that many options, you may opt to do something like removing these. So we're going to delete these two progression actions really quickly. And instead, we're always going to open our ticket in the open status, and it's always going to be defined at a standard rate of 150 an hour. And we have that here when we move from creation to open, the rate is updating in the background. And the cool thing about this is if you have different billable ticket types, so if we look at my 24/7 support, I might want to add or update a different rate, because if it's 24/7, it's coming in at my overtime hours and I want to charge them more. So I'm going to say update rate and make that rate $200. I'm going to mark it as hidden so my staff doesn't have to worry about it. Instead, it's going to get updated in the background. And now whenever a ticket is created in a 24/7 support type, the rate of UX, $200 an hour, will be applied. So just a cool little tangent there to think about as you begin to build out your own ticket types, and you want to make sure you're applying the correct rate based on the type of ticket work it is.
That's awesome. That'll save you so much time too, as opposed to having to go into each individual ticket and pick the rate.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So now from here, let's go ahead and talk about our retainers. Now, retainers, as you know, act as a support contract of sorts. Tickets and projects can sit against a retainer, and the retainer as a whole can have a rate applied to it. So we're going to find an existing retainer in my deployment. We'll look at 1-for-1+ here, monthly support, annual contract. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit it. Now, the screen we're looking at is essentially the retainer creation screen. I just wanted to edit this one so we have values here. You can also find the same screen when you're creating a retainer by dropping down create and selecting retainer. But what I wanted to point out on this page is over here on our right-hand side, it's called rates and invoicing. So we can set a retainer rate, and we have one set here at $100 an hour, which we of course can override by setting our custom rate. And then we have our excess retainer rate. So anytime we exceed the prepaid amount of hours, we will then default to this rate of 150. And finally, there's a little checkbox down here, and it says to apply the retainer rate for issues and projects linked to the period. And what this means is that whenever issues and projects are created against this retainer, all work logged against those objects will be applied the retainer rate and excess retainer rate. So let's walk through an actual example. Let's say a ticket is created against this monthly support contract. Now it's still early on in the month and the ticket only takes 2 hours. We now have 8 hours left of our 10 amount of hours. So we're charging at $100 an hour. That's $200 worth of value. Now later in that same month, they give us one more ticket. They've already exceeded their prepaid hours, so we're now using the excess retainer rate. So any work we log on a ticket or project that is linked to this retainer and is now exceeding the prepaid amount of hours, we will charge them at a rate of 150. So that's how retainers can come into play in applying rates based on objects that are linked to them. So really handy and really good for support contracts where clients are paying you a fixed amount and they get a fixed amount of hours of service and support. All right, so with that, that's going to cover the last object, and we're going to finish off this best practice webinar by talking about divisions. So rates come into play with divisions because you may have clients who are, I guess what you would call grandfathered in, or have a set of legacy rates. Maybe you've been in business for a while. Some of your old timer clients have a rate that is unique to them, and no other clients are allowed to use that rate. So a great way to compensate for that is to use divisions. So we're going to expand our left-hand side once more, select configuration, and the area we're looking at this time is under users and groups, and we want to select divisions. We select divisions here, and we see that I already have 2 divisions created underneath my Excel deployment. So I have my main company called Prismo Entertainment, and then I have 2 divisions underneath me. One is for my German office, where they use a different email signature and logo, and the second is for my legacy clients, who have different rates applied to them. So let's first take a look at legacy clients division. When you look at that division, you'll first be able to define which companies should sit under your legacy clients division. So which companies do you work with have these legacy rates? I've defined OnePlus and Blizzard here. Now, if I look at contacts, I can define specific contacts. I can also define specific staff members. But what I'm really looking at for is right here underneath our rates tab. So this is where we can set those override rates and even turn rates off for these particular clients underneath the division. So we're currently looking at my legacy clients, and you see I already have some deferred rates. On my left-hand side, you see the original rate of $100 an hour. And then we have my override rate. So instead of charging $100 an hour for my legacy clients, instead I want to charge them $80. Instead of $150 for my project management, I want to charge $100, so on and so forth. So this is a great way to account for those legacy rates, or maybe even you work with nonprofits and you give them a deferred rate. This is another great way to capture it. Create a division for your nonprofit clients and define the hourly rates you're going to bill them at. Now, circling back to our divisions list, I do want to talk about the other way divisions can be utilized. And that's if you have, let's say, a company inside your company. So you have a small team, maybe even an internal startup, where they are operating underneath a different logo and brand as a whole. So you might want to create a division for them inside your Excel deployment and give it its own unique signature and logo. So you have the signature tab on the far right-hand side where we can edit that signature. And when you create a division, you'll be able to define that new logo that should be used. And if you're going to be using divisions this way, you may want to go ahead and define the particular staff members here. So we see we have myself. And then if they are paid a different amount, but use the same cost rate names, you can define the override rates here. So you can even override cost rates, because maybe you have to pay people less in Germany than you pay them here in San Francisco. So with that though, I think I've covered just about everything I want to talk about in terms of billable and cost rates. We've gone across how to set them up, what they are, and how they are relevant on each different object, as well as even dive into divisions for just a little bit. At this point, if you have any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Lainey now. We'll be happy to field those, and I will be happy to answer them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Peter. That was super informative. Yeah, if you have any questions for us, feel free to submit them using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Give it just a couple moments there. All right. Well, otherwise, if you think of anything post-webinar, feel free. Oh, we did. We did just get a question in from Lisa. Lisa wants to know if you can show the reports that show the costs.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a few places you can find costs. If you're looking for a particular report, the best tool I'm going to recommend here is our timesheet reporting tool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen once more here. And you can find your timesheet report here in your top right and by selecting timesheet report. So if you want to see the historical cost of a particular employee, you can go ahead and select that employee here in your drop down. Select your date range in the top right corner. We'll just say last month. And now we're going to see all of the work that this user, Peter, has logged from May 1st to May 31st. We can see the companies where he spent his time on, the total amount of revenue generated, and the total cost. So this is the amount of revenue Peter's generated, and this is the cost to the company. So timesheet report is probably going to be your best tool to get that information for each particular user. Now, there are a couple other places where you can go check it out that I won't get too deep into right now. The other is your profitability dashboard, where you're able to view profitability by user based on their total allocated time, so 40 hours a week versus the amount of billable time they've logged, or by actual log time, so you're only displaying time that has been logged versus the billable time logged. And you can also view it here under your scheduled dashboard, where you'll be able to see a forecast of all of your employees, and by hovering over each day, you can see their expected profitability, so their total value raised, the total cost of the company, and a little profitability snapshot right there on that day. But to answer your question very succinctly, timesheet report is going to be your best bet.
Awesome. And then we do have some really great help docs on our site regarding both the schedule dashboard and the profitability dashboard, if you find that that's something that you'd like to learn more about. And of course, you can email support@excello.com if you ever have any questions. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We really, really, really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and go over some Excello fun stuff. We do record all of these webinars and post them to our website. So you'll be able to reference this recording anytime you like. Some previous topics that we've covered, most recently, if you're interested, importing data into Excello and what that looks like, the integration that we provide with Zapier, a really awesome tool, and then also a general overview if you're new to Excello and you're onboarding, what your day-to-day might look like in Excello. And we host these best practice webinars every 2 weeks. And 2 weeks from today, we're going to be hosting the first ever installment of Office Hours, which is an open Q&A with one of our Excello experts, who is on June 21st. It's Peter.
It's me.
It's Peter. And we've had lots of clients in the past ask for just a general Q&A session, and we're really excited to give it a go. So go ahead and visit our blog to snag your spot for that, because I'm sure it's going to be super informative and super fun. And as far as future best practice topics go, you tell us. You tell us what you'd like to see. Go ahead and email those suggestions to bestpractices@excello.com. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we hope you have an excellent rest of your day, wherever you are in the world, rest of your night, morning.
Yep. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll talk to you on the next one.
Absolutely.